Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 13th annual Showdown in the Downtown. This year's event features former UFC fighter and comedian Brendan Schaub, who's going to deliver an outstanding show tonight. We have 9 amazing charities that are benefiting from tonight's event. I really want to thank all of our sponsors for their amazing donations and contributions. I especially want to thank our title sponsor, Domino's Pizza Canada, for being with us since the beginning of this event. They have donated $100,000 towards tonight's event, and over the course of the last 13 years have donated over $1.8 million. I am very grateful to the CEO of Domino's Pizza Canada, Mr. Michael Curran, and also I'm very grateful to the chair of the board of Domino's Pizza Canada Limited, Mr. Michael Schlater, for all that they've done for us. On top of that, we are very lucky to have a champion sponsor, Ellis Dawn, who's been with us since the beginning of time as well. Ellis Dawn contributed $25,000 towards tonight's event. I sincerely want to thank Jeff Smith, the CEO of Ellis Dawn, and I want to thank their entire company for being such a generous sponsor. Welcome to tonight's show. We have 9 amazing charities that are benefiting from tonight's event. Our 2 premier charities are the Matthew Mailing Center for Translational Transplant Studies that conducts basic science research that betters the outcomes of patients with kidney, liver, lung, heart, and pancreas transplants. Our other main charity is the Lilibeth Coberto Kidney Clinical Research Unit that conducts over 40 clinical trials that are finding better treatments for patients suffering with kidney disease. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight and enjoy the festivities. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the 13th annual Showdown in the Downtown. I'm Julie Acheson from CTV News, and I am excited to be your host virtually this evening. This night would not be possible without our champion sponsor, Domino's Pizza Canada. This event is so important, and I'm excited that we continue to raise money to knock out kidney disease. 1 in 10 Canadians has kidney disease. That's 4 million people. Wrap your head around that number. Many patients with kidney disease end up requiring hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis. These treatments have improved significantly over the years, but still negatively impact the quality of life of patients. The number of Canadians on dialysis will double in the next 10 years. More than 3,000 Canadians are on the waiting list for a kidney transplant. It is crucial that research projects continue. This important work will prevent people from developing kidney disease, improve accessibility to kidney transplants, and improve the well-being of patients with kidney disease. All proceeds raised tonight will stay right here in London and support the following amazing community charities: the Lilibeth Coberto Kidney Clinical Research Unit, the Matthew Mailing Center for Translational Transplant Studies, the London Health Sciences Centre Surgical Epilepsy Program, Renal Patient Assistance Fund, Fierce and Fit Special Needs Boxing Incorporated, Making Mindfulness Matter, Unity Project, PHSS Medical and Complex Care, Salt Rescue Organization, and London Health Sciences Centre. We are hoping to raise $250,000 for these amazing charities tonight. And I know with your help, we can do it. I am so excited to share the next couple of hours with you. We have the amazing Brendan Schaub. He is the former mixed martial artist, a stand-up comedian, and host of the podcast Below the Belt, performing for us tonight. We're going to do a Q&A with Brendan, along with our amazing sponsors. And all of you watching, we will be raising money tonight to help knock out kidney disease. The charities we are raising money for are doing some incredible work, and the funds are crucial to patient care. It is so easy for you guys to donate. Click the button on your screen above or below me. Another great way that everyone can help support the cause this year is to purchase a Domino's pizza card. They are valued at $100, and the cost to purchase one is only $75. All proceeds will help us reach our goal of raising tonight $250,000. Thank you to our champion sponsor, Domino's Pizza Canada, for this generous donation. To purchase one of these cards, just click the link on your screen that says Domino's Pizza Cards. The cards will be mailed directly to you. Now, please note the Domino's cards are only valid at Canadian locations. Thank you to our generous $25,000 super heavyweight sponsor, Ellis Dawn. Thank you to our amazing $10,000 heavyweight sponsors, Baxter Canada, Otsuka, Pfizer Canada, Fresenius Canada, Astellas Canada, Paladin Labs, Devolution Productions, and thank you to the Finch Auto Group for their support of the Showdown through their donation matching program. And a big shout out to Adrenaline Training Center for all of their support. All right, are you guys ready to get this show started? I know I am. I am pumped to see Brendan Schaub perform for us tonight. Now, Brendan is an American podcast host. He entertains with a mix of truth, comedy, and rawness to the world of martial arts. He is a former professional mixed martial artist and stand-up comedian. He is the host of the Fighter and the Kid podcast, the Below the Belt with Brendan Schaub podcast, and co-host of the King and Sting podcast. Now, after signing with the UFC in 2009 to compete on The Ultimate Fighter, he fought with the company until 2014. He officially retired from MMA in 2015, and since then, this guy has been so busy. He's been performing stand-up comedy, initially as a duo act with comedian Brian Callen, but more recently as a solo comedian. Schaub released his first comedy special titled You'd Be Surprised in 2019. Our champion sponsor, Domino's Canada, is proud to bring you this first Q&A from Brendan Schaub. A big Showdown welcome to Brendan, and also joining us, Jamie Champion, president of Prospect Fighting Championship. Hey guys, I'm so excited to be sharing this night with you. A big welcome to you, Brendan. I have to say, going from fighting to a comedian, you have quite the story.
Yeah, that's quite the intro. I'm exhausted. It sounds tougher than it actually was. But yeah, I think, comedy has always been kind of my calling, and I was kind of always the funny guy in the locker room, and just a matter of time before I went down this path. But I got punched in the face. I caught a lot of footballs, but eventually it led me here. So I'm just happy to be part of this for a great cause, and I'm just excited. I'm excited you guys allowed me to be part of this.
Well, I'm excited for tonight. I'm excited for this Q&A. So let's get things started. Take it away.
Hey, Brandon, thank you again. I appreciate you doing this, man. And this has been a collaboration over the last few months. We put together, compiled a fan list of questions to ask you, things, nothing outrageous, just more of little things to talk about. But I'll get started. This one is, I'm very interested in this one. Recently, a man in LA County was driving his SUV on the highway in Los Angeles, and on the wrong side of the highway, I should say, with his girlfriend and 4 kids in the vehicle. He purposely collided with another vehicle in an attempt to kill himself. You saw what happened. You pulled your car over, pulled out the kids. Tell us what happened there.
Yeah, man, we're kicking this off with a banger. I usually don't like to talk about it. It's one of those things, I was headed to dinner with my wife, and we're driving down the 101 in California, Los Angeles, where I live. And as we're going, traffic is regular flow. It's LA, so it's nothing too crazy. And then just traffic came to a screeching halt. My girl's like, stop. Look, there's that car in front of us. And it wasn't a car. It was a big rig. And the big rig was kind of, it came to a screeching halt, and it was like kind of at a V. So the trailer came off the side, and there was smoke. So we're going around the accident, and we're looking. Everyone's going kind of slow just because he was in the near lane. So we're going around it. And as we're going around, I look and I see a van, like a typical mom van. And I see a little boy about the same age as my son waving people down like this. And I tell my girl, I'm like, oh, that's a kid. And she's like, what is going on? I go, I don't know. And he's pointing down. He's on top of the van. He's pointing down. So I go around all the traffic. I'm like, I got to help those kids. So I park a ways up, kind of out of the way of kind of danger there. I guess we're still on the highway and cars are flying by. There's debris everywhere. And I get out of the car and I tell my girl to stay there. And my father-in-law's a highway California patrol for 30 years. And he always tells me, do not pull over on the side of the highway because a lot of accidents happen there. So I remember thinking that. And I'm getting out of the car and I'm running towards the accident. And I see a man with no shoes on, literally crossing the highway. And the 101, for those of you that live in California, it's one of the busiest highways in the world. So it's insane to see a person trying to cross the highway. So I see this disoriented gentleman with no shoes on, trying to cross the highway. And then he gets hit by a car. He gets hit. And I'm like, well, he's definitely not alive anymore. And so I'm just waiting to see what happens and to see if he needed help. And then he pops up and then he crosses over the other lanes, another 4 lanes, and makes it over. So I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. I thought maybe this guy was driving the car, or maybe he was the truck driver trying to get help, or maybe he was concussed and he's just, acting crazy. I didn't know. And as I get to the car, this is a long story short, as I get to the car, there was kids trapped in the car. There's one gentleman trying to help. And I won't get too into the details. It's pretty dicey. Long story short, got the kids out of the car, gave them to a lady, got the kids out of harm's way. All the children were fine. The mother in the car ended up passing away. And the horror of all of it was, again, we're kicking this off on a positive note, guys. The horror of it all, the father was trying to kill the family. So on my end, the only thing I knew what I could do to help the family is their GoFundMe was at 30 grand. That was their goal. And so I went on my platforms and just made sure, I could do what I could do. And I think they reached around 75,000. And then we've also helped out in other ways as well. And the aunt of those kids actually reached out to me personally. So I'm connecting with them in just a matter of weeks. So heavy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was bringing it up, to kind of shed light on the fact that you were so helpful. And
I'll say this. I'll wrap it up with. I'll say this to button this whole story up so it's not on a negative note or a dark note. My father said this because it was in People's Magazine and TMZ and all the news stations. And my dad called me and goes, I don't understand why this is news. I said, I agree, Dad. He goes, what were you supposed to do? You weren't raised to see somebody that needs help and keep going. I don't get why this is news. I don't understand it either, Dad. So I think anybody I associate with, or if you're a fan of mine or you buy a ticket to my show, if you wouldn't stop and help those kids, I have no respect for you, man. So I think anybody I associate with or anybody who listens to my show would do the same thing. So I'll leave it on that. Yeah,
well, let's jump into your father then. You were born in Aurora, Colorado, and your dad was a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. Does his involvement in martial arts rub off on you, considering you went the football route?
Yeah, not really. I mean, when I was young, he enrolled me and my brother in karate, and we are obsessed with Bloodsport, the movie Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, who doesn't love that movie, right? So we thought Taekwondo was going to be that. We thought we were going to be like, Frank Dukes and Chung Lee and doing all this cool stuff. And then they have you in the gi and we're throwing punches like this and blocking punches like this. Me and my brother look at each other like, dude, this isn't what Frank Dukes does. Like, this is awful. It's so boring. So we got out of that. And then I was drawn to football. My brother, played basketball and some other sports. He was never the most disciplined dude when it came to sports. That was more my thing. So really the martial arts aspect, I think the one thing that did translate over that my father taught my brother and I, my older brother, he's older by 2 years, is the discipline aspect. So, martial arts is all about discipline and respect. And I think that's what translated into everything I do now and in football and fighting and stuff like that. But no, I was never like crazy into Taekwondo and karate and stuff.
I've always said the discipline of martial arts, wearing a uniform and the grading system instilled that discipline in people. That's why I love the martial arts. At high school and college, you were heavily involved in football. Following college, you were signed with the Buffalo Bills briefly and then played with the Utah Blaze. We've seen a few football players transition into MMA. How did the game of football shape your life, and how did it prepare you for what was to come in mixed martial arts and in the things that you're doing on your daily basis?
Ooh, good question, man. Football as a child growing up, especially in Denver, Colorado, I grew up in predominantly like urban neighborhoods. So the way that you would be cool is by playing sports. The most athletic kid was cool. So I was drawn to that because I want to be cool. So sports were such a focus. So I realized that there was, self-worth in being athletic and playing football. So I was really drawn to that. And it just kind of took off for me because as a kid, growing up with, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, and, Jerry Rice and Emmitt Smith and all these guys, that's and Junior Seau was my hero. So that was kind of the game plan to make it to the NFL. And I think, when I got to college, I played Division I at University of Colorado. I realized that it's a business. And I think that was the first time where I saw like major Division I sports was a business. And I worked my tail off. I played a lot of football there. And then, as a kid, you look at the NFL and you think it's, as soon as you step foot on an NFL field or, with an organization like the Buffalo Bills, like that's it, man. It's gonna be this aha moment. And then I had an opportunity to do that. And I think maybe at the time, because I was younger, I was so sensitive. I thought it was gonna be like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when all the kids walk into the candy store, and it wasn't. It was like a meat factory, man. It's a business and it's very cutthroat. And it was just an eye-opening experience, and it really made me grow up. And it just made me realize, even with hard work, that sometimes that's not enough. So I think once the football door closed, I knew that I had to figure something else out. So I was selling supplements door to door, like Pursuit of Happiness style, selling supplements door to door. But I would do jiu-jitsu in the off season. I'd always do a lot of jiu-jitsu to stay in shape for the football season. And I was pretty good at it. And then I started to do it more. And then I started to train a little bit in some boxing, but mainly jiu-jitsu still, because I really love jiu-jitsu. And then the owner of the gym, Nate Marquardt, at the time, who's a UFC great, fought Anderson Silva for the title at middleweight. They call him Nate the Great, matter of fact. He was a Strikeforce champion. He was the owner of the gym. And he goes, hey, dude, tomorrow you should come back because you're such a big guy. You're bigger than everybody else. You don't have a proper training partner. There's this guy who drives down from Greeley, Colorado, once or twice a week, and he's huge. And it was Shane Carwin, who eventually, long story short, ended up being the UFC heavyweight champion of the world, interim champion of the world. So it was off to the races after that, man. Once I met Shane, we were like this Batman and Robin duo. He was Batman, I was Robin, whatever.
So Shane was a huge pivotal moment for you to really jump into the sport.
Yeah, because, at the time he wasn't Shane Carwin. He was Shane Carwin, the, water engineer that worked for the city of Greeley and had a wrestling background. And he was like a big brother who just constantly pushed me. So me and him were training. I think he only had 1 or 2 fights at the time. And I cornered him to fight this guy named Rex Richard in Mississippi. That was like my first like real live event. It was so intense. They were such big guys. And then Shane signed me up for Golden Gloves, even though I wasn't really working on boxing at the time. I was doing it, but not like dedicated to it. He signed me up for Golden Gloves in Colorado. And then that was kind of the start. That was like my jumping point was Golden Gloves boxing tournament in Denver, Colorado.
Wow, interesting. So when you went 4-0 as an athlete, and then you went on to the Ultimate Fighter, what was it like living in the house? And is it scripted? Is it bold? Like, what's the real scoop on what it's like to be in the house?
Yeah, the seasons now, to me, it's like watered down. They need to figure the format out. But when I was there, it was season 10. So the coaches were Rampage and Rashad. And it was 16 guys. And, now it's kind of younger guys, not with a ton of experience. But my season is very interesting because you had a guy like me who was, I think, 3-0, going to the house. And then there was Roy Nelson, who had 30 fights, former world champion. And then there was other guys who had a lot of experience and some guys with no experience. I think Mitrione lied on his application and had like 2 amateur fights. So there was like this weird spectrum of guys. But as far as scripted, no. You know, a lot of guys, alumni from Ultimate Fighter will go, oh, I can't believe how they edited it, man. They made me look bad. It's like, no, dude, that's just look, you said that stuff. So, you know, they kind of edit the way you are. Like you did say that stuff. Now they can paint a story, but you're the one saying that stuff. But I would say the only thing, there's nothing, you know, fake about it. The one thing that's interesting where they know what they're doing because it's reality TV is you get a list every morning. So there's a list in the kitchen. You can write down whatever you want. So I'd write down like filet mignon and crab legs and whatever food you want. And that would take like 2 to 3 days to come. But if I wrote down, say, Jack Daniel's whiskey or vodka or, you know, Buffalo Trace whiskey or Tiger Thick whiskey, whatever it is, that would come in an hour. So they knew by giving the kids alcohol, it would create certain entertainment or drama. So I don't think, you know, they're not telling you, hey, make sure you drink, but if you want it, it's there. So, you know, to me, the Ultimate Fighter in the House, when I see guys complain about it, to me, I won't say it was a walk in the park, but to me, it was 6 weeks of your life dedicated, no cell phone, no books, no, you know, can't have a Bible. They give you a journal, but outside that, you had no communication with anybody. So for me, I was like, hold up, I just got to dedicate myself for 6 weeks and I have a career. So that's just the way I thought of it. And I used to get motivation. I used to love when I would see guys like break down and quit, or they want to call their wives or their girlfriends. I'm like, oh, he doesn't want as bad as I do. So I just remember thriving off guys breaking. So to me, it was a great experience, man. It was a great experience.
And you went on and you fought some killers, man. I'll read off some of them. Roy Nelson, Gabriel Gonzaga, Miracle Crocop, which is crazy, Antonio Rodrigo, Nogueira, Ben Brothwell, Matt Mitrione, Arlovsky. Which of these guys were you the most excited or nervous to fight?
Ooh, good question. Most nervous out of those guys, which I think this will surprise a lot of people, would be Matt Mitrione, because he was a friend. And also going into that fight, a lot of people didn't realize that was my last fight on the contract, and it was the last fight on like several sponsorship deals. So if you lose, I might get cut, or I'm going to get lower pay, you know, in the next contract, and I'm not going to get all that sponsorship money. So I just felt like there was so much pressure going to that fight. There was so much pressure, and that was in Toronto. That fight was actually in Toronto. Yeah. So I just remember there was so much pressure going to that fight, and I was so nervous for it. Thank God I ended up winning that fight. But, you know, ignorance is bliss. I should have been most afraid of Roy Nelson, right? Because technically I had 7 fights at the time. I was 7-0 if you count my Ultimate Fighter fights. And when I fought Roy Nelson, in my head, I was like, I'm going to smoke this dude. Like, how's he going to beat me? But again, ignorance is bliss. I didn't have the experience to realize Roy's a pro. He's a former world champion. You're not going to get him out in the first round. But, you know, there's only one way to get experience, and that's by doing it. So, it was a crazy life, man. I look back at those fights, and I can't believe I did that stuff. Can't believe it.
Yeah, that's insane. What was Arlovsky like?
Orlovsky was interesting too, because him and I trained together. He was a great training partner to me. He would set me up at the University of New Mexico with their cold tubs and hot tubs. It's, you know, I think it's because he's from Belarus or somewhere, you know, that Russia, right, freezing area. You know, when we trained with him, he seemed cold at first, but he's such a sweet dude, and he always had his dog with him, and he was always super professional. I remember he was a hero of mine. I remember training with him, and, you know, it's well documented. I drink a ton of coffee. So before we were sparring, I was drinking coffee, and me and him were grappling. I remember I was like right in his face. I was like, dude, sorry about my coffee breath. And he goes, much better than poop like yesterday. I was like, all right, dude. Well, but he's dead serious, you know, like there's no, you know, humor with that guy. So I was nervous for that because we trained together and the rounds were really, really close. Like if Greg Jackson would sit there and score it would be tough, man, to judges decide who won the round. So I knew going into that fight, it was a tough fight. So I was really nervous for that one.
Do you guys talk to each other before that fight's happened? Like, knowing that you guys know each other and you're about to throw down, do you guys ever reach out and, you know, is there like or is it you have to make him your enemy in your head kind of thing?
I never looked at fights that way, like making enemies or fighting angry or anything like that. I always looked at it like an athletic competition. But yeah, it's not like me and Arlovsky would text each other. I remember, when I fought Mitrione, I fought Arlovsky, just when the bout agreement signed, I'd be like, good luck. At least we're friends. They'd be like, good luck, dude. Hope stay healthy. See you whatever, November 7th or December 21st, So there was none of that. And after the fight, he gave me a big hug. That was a weird split decision fight in Vancouver. They kind of screwed me on that one, but it happens. I let it go to the judges. And Arlovsky was like, you won that fight, man. And I was like, nah, but did any of us really win it? It was kind of a boring fight. I thought I did more with the takedowns, but end of the day, it doesn't matter. And he's still fighting, man. That guy's such a beast. He's such a talent, man. And I love watching him fight.
Okay. Before we go to a break, in 2004, after the loss to Travis Brown, Brian Callen and Joe Rogan advised you to retire on an MMA podcast. Was it odd? Was it strange that it was a live podcast? How do you feel now in retrospect? And I imagine athletes taken aback being told this while they're still actively competing is a hard pill to swallow. How did you take that?
Again, it caught me off guard. It just caught me off guard because I remember, I was kind of already one step out the door. And when I was warming up to fight Travis Brown, I looked at my coach and I went, this is the last one, man. Like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. I'm not doing this anymore, man. I want to do other stuff. So I was always kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And Joe knew that. Joe's a very close friend. He knew that. So, he has seen more dudes get punched in the face than any other human being to ever live on this earth. So he knows the consequences. And he also knows that I was into other stuff and I could do other stuff. And he's the one who really pushed me in that direction. So that tough love, I think at first my family was upset he did that. Some of my friends were upset, but I think in hindsight, if you look now, they're all, oh my God, thank God he did that. Because how many fighters have we seen hang on and go, oh, well, let me do one more. Let me do this and let me do this. And so thank God he did that, man. That's a good friend. Now, should we have done it live, to millions of people? I don't know. I probably would like them to take me to the side like, hey, dude, you got to stop. Let's work on stand-up. Let's work on podcasting. But, it happened for a reason. Thank God it happened. I think, maybe to help a lot of other people out there who, they don't have a friend like Joe Rogan to kind of nip it in the butt. So
I see it being in the industry myself. I see a lot of guys that should wrap it up.
Yeah.
And it's good to have people that actually care for you to say, hey, look, man, wrap it. Whether the timing, Joe gets sometimes criticized for his timings with interviews with guys and different things. The running joke of, you ever see the memes of him with a microphone interviewing someone who's the Lion King's dad is dead, for example.
Yeah. No,
the timing was.
Yeah. I don't see memes. I think for Joe, I think in hindsight, if you were to look at Joe's career and my career, and they're like, was it the right decision? I don't think anybody on this earth like, nah, I should have kept going, man. Like it clearly was the right choice. Yeah,
absolutely. The pay structure back then compared to now, would you say, was it definitely different?
It was different because of the sponsorships. The pay structure is better now, but they're making more money now, so it should be better. I think a lot of people want me to like go towards Dana and say, "Oh, fighter pay." Dana has a point with this when he goes, these journalists and stuff that come after me about pay, they have no idea what it takes to run a company. They have no idea, the details that go into it. So there is something with that. There really is, because we've seen other leagues, MMA leagues, try to pay the fighters, 50 and what they're worth and stuff like that. And they're not around anymore. So there's something with that. But I do believe they can pay the fighters more, especially when it comes to endorsements. Those Venom deals and the Monster deals are trash. So, when I was fighting, it was like whatever you could kill, you could eat. So, there's some guys, because they're good at speaking and they looked a certain way, they could get, $100,000 a fight. And then maybe the guy you're fighting is only getting 20, but that's on him. He has to do a better job marketing and doing himself. So it's just there's pros and cons with when I fought and when they're fighting now, guys are paid more. So hopefully it works out one day, I don't know.
I think it will. We're going to jump to a sponsor reel and we'll be back and we'll continue talking. It's great talking with you, but we'll be right back.
My name's Faisal Rahman. I'm a kidney specialist at University Hospital at London Health Sciences Center. And I'm the chair of the Showdown in the Downtown, which is an annual charity event that's been running since 2009. Back in 2006, I was in the prime of my career. You know, I was in a good place. My family was healthy. I was happy. And I think one of the things that can happen to us is we become complacent, or become too focused on the inner. And, you know, I was busy with my work, trying to do a great job. I was getting promoted. You know, I was focused on my kids. But outside of taking care of my family, I really wasn't doing much outside of my inner circle. And then in 2006, you know, a life-changing event happened when my daughter, Nadia, became sick. And I still remember the day I was at a journal club and I got a phone call that, you know, Nadia was in tremendous pain. Her hands were all swollen and her knees were swollen and she was screaming in pain. And so I remember, you know, just leaving in a panic and going home and watching her and she was limping and in quite a bit of discomfort. So I was really scared. And so we took her to the emergency room at Victoria Hospital, and they didn't know what was going on. They did a slew of blood work, and they thought she might have juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. As it happens, there's no arthritis specialist that specializes in kids at the time in London. So I remember I called the top expert in Toronto, and I packed family up and went to Toronto to meet with the pediatric rheumatologist in Toronto. And they said, yeah, you know what? When I examine her and look at all of the blood work, this looks like juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And they started her on medicines. And the medicines seemed to help in the beginning. Then all of a sudden, the pain got worse. And again, I remember a couple of weeks later, she became rigid. She was in so much pain, she couldn't move at all. And I picked her up and she was, again, screaming. It was horrible. And I remember putting her in the minivan and all the way driving down to Toronto. You know, every time we hit a bump, she would cry. And, you know, your heart breaks. And we took her to Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. And when she was there, they said, you know what, something's atypical here. And so they did a bone marrow biopsy and discovered she had acute leukemia. So that was the beginning of a long journey for all of us. She was hospitalized for 3 months because she was so sick at the time. And when she was in there and getting toxic drugs pumped into her and getting infections and other complications, you know, I met other families and other little kids who were going through it. And they all kind of heard that I was a doctor. So they would come to me for comfort to talk to them and talk to the kids and stuff. Meanwhile, I was in a position where I needed to be comforted too. And it was a very odd situation to be in. But I realized, it made me realize how vulnerable we all are, how vulnerable or how fragile life is. But thank goodness, because of great medical care that we received from Dr. Shayna Zeltzer at Victoria Hospital, she made an excellent recovery and has been in remission now for gosh, we're approaching 10 years now. But that life-changing moment made me realize that I can't be selfish. I can't just worry about myself or those I love around me. I need to make a difference. And so that's where I started really getting involved with charity work, and we started raising money for the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. And then after that, you know, we wanted to really take it to another level, and I met with my colleagues, and I was encouraged by my colleagues, Dr. Blake and Dr. Garg, to start a charity event to benefit our patients, our kidney patients, and others as well. And so I'd always had a passion for combat sports. I'd always kind of trained in boxing. I'd never participated in an actual fight, but I always had an interest in that. And so I said, listen, if I'm gonna create a new charity event, it has to be something that I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about combat sports. I always have been since I was 10 years old. And so we started this event, and my boxing coach at that time, Kathy Yuri, said, if you really want to raise money, you should compete and fight, because people want to come and see you fight. And so I said, okay, let's do it. And so I formed a committee. I found Francie Ender, who was an event planner who had actually organized the combat sports event before mine, who had some experience. And I formed an awesome committee consisting of nurses and doctors and lawyers and business people. We all got together and we created Showdown in the Downtown. And we had our first inaugural event in 2009. It was a boxing competition between the United States and Canada, and I fought on that event. And it was the beginning of something very special. You know, I would have been very pleased if we had raised $20,000 or $30,000, and from that first event, we raised $100,000 after all expenses paid. And so we were able to benefit our kidney patients, but invest into research and in poverty programs and to help homeless shelters and such. So we kept going and we kept upping the ante. I then started competing in kickboxing and mixed martial arts, and we've had a number of tournaments featuring those sports. We've had title events in kickboxing, and with every event that we've had lately, we've raised up to $250,000 per event. And so we've been able to benefit so many different charities, which take care of patients suffering from special needs, from a variety of different illnesses, epilepsy, cancer research, kidney research, people needing solid organ transplantation. We've really been able to benefit all aspects of life. So not only medical research, but poverty initiatives, initiatives that help vulnerable populations and our special needs populations. And so it's something that I'm extremely proud of. And I think it started because of that very first time when my daughter became sick. It made me realize that we need to look beyond ourselves and help others who are in need and others who are battling medical illnesses especially. You know, some people did approach me saying it's a bit odd that you're doing a medical charity in a sport that people get hurt in, but I see a lot of parallels between combat sports and our patients who are, and our citizens who are battling illness or poverty or social isolation. And you know, there are a number of times, I can speak for myself, when I've been in the ring where I've been pummeled. You know, I've been against the ropes, getting, you know, beat up by a guy who's stronger than me or more athletic than me, and finding the willpower to overcome that, to keep going and to keep battling. No matter how many times I've been knocked down, I've always tried to get up and face what I'm facing. And I think our patients go through that tenfold more than we do in combat sports when they're battling cancer or kidney disease. They have to get up every day, sometimes not feeling great, and push forward, push through the day. And I think combat sports teaches us that no matter what you're facing in the cage or in the ring, you know, you have to overcome that if you're going to succeed or get to the next level. And I'm always encouraged by the courage our patients show when they do that every day, despite side effects of medications and what they're going through with their illness experience. They're able to push through and go to another day and hopefully go to a better day. So for example, if they're on dialysis, to get to that kidney transplant that returns them to a quality of life that they would want. And the research we support will help them do that. For our fellow citizens who are battling homelessness, you know, we support the Unity Project, which is a shelter that prides itself in trying to find independent living arrangements for our citizens who are battling homelessness. When we support the Mary J. Wright Center, which is helping children who are facing social isolation, you know, the work that they do is going to ensure that their lives improve, and that also hopefully we can do research to help prevent children from going through such difficult experiences. Again, I'm very proud that after 12 years of running this program, we've raised over $2.4 million for a variety of charities. This is our 13th event. You know, COVID has had its challenges. Our last two events have been virtual, but I'm so proud to say that our last virtual event raised more money than all of our previous events combined for our charities. So I'm very grateful for all of our sponsors. I'm very grateful to Domino's Pizza Canada that has contributed $1.8 million over the next 10 years. They've committed to donating that much more. I'm grateful to Ellis Don and Jeff Smith, the CEO of Ellis Don, who has supported us year after year with huge money. And I'm grateful to all of our heavyweight sponsors, our corporate sponsors, all of the nephrologists and doctors and nurses who have donated their time and money to this to make it successful. And so welcome to our 13th annual Showdown in the Downtown. And I just want to thank everyone who has supported us over the years.
All right, sorry about those audio issues. You know how that goes, but we are back and we are at it. So we are raising money tonight for such an important cause. And when you think about $250,000, we can get there together. We have already raised over $83,000. So please keep those donations coming in. Now, you can also purchase a Domino's gift card. They're valued at $100 for a cost of only $75. There are only 200 available. So purchase one, grab one before they are gone. They won't last long. Who doesn't love a good pizza party? I know I sure do. All right. A big thank you, of course, to our champion sponsor, Domino's Pizza Canada, for the donation of these cards. All monies raised through the sale of these cards will go directly towards helping reach our goal, again, of $250,000 to help fight kidney disease, and that money goes to all of our charities. Now, our super heavyweight sponsor, Elliston, is proud to bring you our second Q&A from Brendan Schaub. Brendan is going to join us just shortly, and we get to chat with him a bit more. Definitely has an interesting story. Brendan is also a dad, and he keeps very, very busy. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about his MMA career, but also more interested to hear a little bit about him as a comedian. I listened to one of his podcasts earlier today, actually, and just to kind of get a feel for what Brendan was like. I mean, he has an incredible amount of followers online. He has over 1 million Instagram followers. On Twitter, I believe he has over 800,000 followers. So this guy definitely has a following, not only in the mixed martial arts world, but really as a comedian as well. And when you share so much about your life and you're able to really bring people in, that's what he does in his podcast. So for someone like me who I'm not watching fights all the time, I used to be a huge GSP fan. When he retired, guys, I kind of slid out a little bit. I really like to have someone to root for. So anyway, I'm excited to hear this next Q&A with you guys, and take it away.
So let's touch base on the comedy side of things. Nerves wise, is there a huge difference between standing up in front of a mic and bombing in front of a bunch of people, or fighting? What's how would you compare the two nerves?
Different, because in fighting, I can't really control it. I can prepare for what I think's going to happen, but in the UFC, you're fighting against a guy who's pretty damn good. So, and you really can't predict what he's going to do. So, the level of unknown in the UFC used to give me anxiety that I don't have the vocabulary to describe to you guys. The anxiety was insane. I'll put it like this: if you're ever bullied in school, it was like that bully, and you would defeat that bully, and then you knew there was another bigger, badder bully waiting for you in a few months. So that anxiety and fear of facing that bully never went away. And as you got bigger and fought tougher guys, these bullies were tougher, tougher, and tougher. So that's kind of the easiest way I can describe the anxiety of being a professional fighter and not being able to control it. And also the embarrassment, when the valleys are the lowest of the low and the peaks are the highest of the high, but there's no really middle ground with fighting. And I always found that difficult because I couldn't control a lot of that stuff. I found it very, very difficult. And some guys are great at it, like Julie met with GSP. He was probably the best at controlling, and playing at a level field and controlling all the kind of chaos that comes with fighting. So with comedy, it's different, man, because if I just do before COVID, if I just did a set in LA, I could do 6 sets in a night. I would shoot down to the Comedy Store in the belly room and do a set, and maybe that joke wouldn't work, and then I could rework it and then go to the main room, try it, and then I could go to the Improv and try it, and I could go to the Laugh Factory and try it, and beeline down the Ice House and try it. And if it didn't work, I knew it was a work in progress, but people weren't seeing it. It wasn't broadcasted on HBO or on a major pay-per-view, and millions of people weren't critiquing me off, that joke. So comedy's just different. Like tonight when I get done with this, I have a show at the Bud Light Courtyard Event Center, the AT&T Center, which is a big venue. And I'm nervous, but I'm more excited for it. I was never excited to get punched in the face, if that makes sense. It was a job, but when I won, I was excited that I didn't get hurt. But comedy, you give out what you put into it. So I know I've worked hard on the material. I know I'm touring like crazy. I know what needs work, what doesn't need work. And it's just different. I can control the narrative in comedy. And that really takes out a lot of my anxiety, a lot of my fear. Now, will all of it hit like you want to? No. And are the crowds different? Yeah. And depending on what market you're in, is it different? Yeah. But in general, I have a good idea how it's going to go tonight.
You ever bomb so bad?
Listen, Louis C.K., who's one of the greatest comics to ever do it, he always had this thing, and I think a lot of young comics took this on. He goes, you got to bomb 10,000 times before you get good. Dude, listen, if you've ever sucked at anything 10,000 times before you got good at it, it might not be for you. It's just not for you, man. You lose 10,000 fights, and then you win one, you're like, oh, there we go. Now I'm going to start my career. So yeah, I haven't to the point where it's like crickets or I'm getting booed. I've missed some jokes and been able to dug myself out, but as far as like a complete bomb, people walking out of the room, I haven't, man, just because I prepare so much. I'll do the set in front of my girl at home. I'll do it in front of my friends. And by the time you guys see it, I at least have some idea that it's going to work,
See, originally we wanted to have you do a comedy show. That was the whole point of it. That was the big push but with COVID and everything happening, we really wanted, it just won't work virtually. You need a crowd, you need that aura, that feeling. This is still just as good just to hang out and chat with you. What advice would you give to?
But next time we got to do this in person, do it.
1,000%.
I owe you guys. We'll figure that out, and I will fly to London, and we'll do this in person when this crazy. Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you prepare your jokes? What goes into writing them? Is it just natural things that happen on a daily basis? In my head, I imagine you guys, you're always silly. So, that's a funny joke. Let's write that down.
Yeah, I think there's silliness in it. I don't, there's some comics, I think Rogan does this, and there's some other, like Burr does this. A lot of comics that will write it down, word for word, but it doesn't really work for me. It always comes, if I write word for word and I say it out loud, it's always awkward. It sounds like a robot. So for me, what I have is bullet points, and then it allows me to have the freedom to kind of riff and find my way. And eventually doing the shows over and over, that riffing will go into a kind of a streamline. And then there's branches where I can play off of it. But like my set tonight, this hour set, it's just, if you look at my notes on my phone, it's just all bullet points. There's not a ton of detail. It's all bullet points. and there's concepts, and I know where the jokes are at, and in between those jokes I can play and interact. So for me, it's just like, like a new joke that I wrote the other day is me and my brother driving down to San Diego, and all over the news was ISIS and the suicide bombers. And we're just driving, and me and him were just started talking about it, and I started to riff on that. And I was like, hold that thought. I was like, I got some. So wrote it, as we were driving, pulled over, wrote down the taglines I had for it, and then tried it that night. So that, that's kind of a little snowball effect. So it starts with that idea. And then as you keep touring and keep working, it turns into this giant snowball, and then it's kind of ready to go.
That's impressive. In 2013, you and Brian Callen started the podcast, The Fighter and the Kid. When you launched in the early years breaking into the market, what challenges did you face and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, good question, dude. I think it was, remember, podcasting 8 years ago wasn't what it is now, where everyone and their stepmom has a podcast and there's big actors involved in it now. At that time, podcasting was kind of frowned upon. Like, I remember Brian's friends who were in the acting business in Hollywood used to make fun of him. We used to do this podcast. They would look down at like, oh, you're just doing it because you can't get work in Hollywood and stuff like that. So Brian, he did see the vision, even though he got made fun of doing it. I think too, back then, it was an outlet for me, because if you're an athlete, that's whoever you are, LeBron, Tom Brady, or you're Conor McGregor, although he's a little different, but John Jones, right, who's in trouble with the media, right? So, the UFC and those leagues are going to paint a narrative. They're going to paint a narrative and they're going to release the news. And obviously, sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's bad news, but those organizations have their PR people and they're going to paint you one direction, whether it's good or bad. So for me, I thought there was so much power in being able to sit down, and we didn't think anybody was going to listen, but at least I got to tell my side of the story of everything going on. And when I started that podcast with Brian, when I say I had a chip on my shoulder, I had a box of Pringles on my goddamn shoulder because, I was, again, it was kind of, I had this chip on my shoulder because I felt like I was wronged with the UFC when they signed the Reebok deal. I had all this animosity towards him. Now I'm older, more mature. I'm a dad. I look back at it, I'm like, oh my God, dude, you were just so immature, man, about it. But that's what got me to the dance. I was one of the only guys to speak out against the UFC. And I knew that I wasn't really going to compete again. So they couldn't do much to me. And I felt like I was fighting the good fight. And I had an enemy in my hindsight. And at the time it was Dana White, whether it was justified or not, that's what fueled me, man. So I owe a lot of the podcast success to him, which is the first time I'll say that. I have no animosity towards the guy.
What was it? Can you tell people that who don't know what happened with Dana White?
Yeah. So again, when I was fighting, they allowed all sponsorships. So whether it was Echo or Boni Acai or Oakley or, these major brands, they would pay, a ton of money to be on your shorts. And then the UFC said, we don't want those guys looking like NASCAR. So we're going to bring in an overall sponsor and we're going to create a pay structure. So again, in my head, I'm like, oh, they're doing this to mess with me. I was never GSP. I was never Conor McGregor. I was never, John Jones. I was a good fighter, a really good fighter, but I was never a main event guy. So they're not making decisions based off Brendan Schaub. They're making decisions based off their business that benefits the business. But at that time, because I was young and experienced, I felt like they were doing it just to mess with me, I couldn't believe other guys were going for it.
You took it personal.
Because I took it very, very personal. Again, I used that rocket fuel to get me to where I was at, but I should have pointed my anger in a different direction, but it worked. So again, think about, let's just take a number. I'm not saying I made this. Let's say I was making $100,000 per fight, getting my own sponsors. And then the UFC said, all right, you can't have those sponsors anymore. We're going to pay you $5,000 and you wear this uniform. I go, well, I'm out $95,000. I went, sorry, that's the way it goes. It just didn't seem right to me. And I was very loud about it. I was very outspoken. I lost my job working with the UFC. I was on the UFC Now show and UFC Tonight and stuff like that. And none of that ever bothered me. It never bothered me. And I felt like at the time it was justifiable. It really was. So again, older, I'm a father, a businessman myself. They're not making decisions. It's not personal, dude. It's not. But again, thank God that happened, because that gave me the rocket fuel to just have that chip on my shoulder. And, I use that as motivation, man.
Absolutely. Let's touch base on head injuries in the sport. We don't talk about it enough. There's post-concussion syndrome, addiction to pain medicines. Other forms of drug addiction are very common. Have you ever had to deal with any of these issues? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think I have an addictive personality by nature. I don't think it's because I played football for 15 years or got punched in the face for like 7.
Well, not so much you, just athletes in general. So a lot of them, is it the vigorous training? Is it?
I hear you. It's a lot with a lot of athletes. You look in the NFL, look at NBA, a lot of it's, prescription drugs. And then we found out that marijuana can benefit a lot of those guys. So, they're taking that in consideration. It's also, a guy that signs up to fight grown men in a steel cage in their underwear, or a guy that plays football for a living. You're talking about a different breed, man. So I think those guys are willing to take more risks and stuff like that. And, hopefully, it's tough, right? Because in order to get that good at that particular sport, you got to be obsessed with it. Well, you can't just turn that off. So, if hopefully they can channel it to something else they're obsessed with, and it doesn't come in the form of that other stuff. It's a problem, man. It's with opiates and stuff like that, it's obviously a problem. But with science and technology and just research, you can see a lot, with marijuana is solving a lot of these guys' pains and stuff like that, and CBD and stuff like that. So I wish I had an answer for you, but unfortunately, I think it's just something you're going to deal with for a long, long time when you're talking about professional athletes.
Now let's touch base on CBD. Now your son was having seizures, and you started giving CBD. How thankful are you for that, and how is everything now?
Yeah, what a wild thing. So when my son was 2, he would just, before bed or in the middle of the night, in the morning, he'd just freeze and just kind of freak out and close his eyes, and be these shooting pains. His lips would go purple. And, as a father, anyone with kids, it's literally the worst thing that could happen in the world. So they run all these tests on him, and they find out it's benign epileptic seizures, and they want to put him on medication. And I think because, as your previous question, because of being a professional athlete, stuff like that, whenever the doctor will go, here's medication, I was always a little wary, like, hold on, well, let me look up the side effects, stuff like that. So when it came with my son, I did a bunch of research. I looked into it, and I just happened to stumble upon this forum, some mom forum. That's how, it was like 2 a.m. I'm just up in my undies researching all this stuff for my kid. And there was this mom forum, and it was all these other moms that were struggling with their kid with epileptic benign seizures. And they said, some said, oh, I give my son medication, this is what happened. And then this mom in all capital letters goes, do not give your kid that medication, try CBD. This is what I did, it went away. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. It's worth a shot. And you look up CBD, and there's no bad side effects, nothing like that. It can't hurt them. So I called up my friend who has this, high level CBD, and I give it to my son, and he's never had one since. It worked. He never had one since. And it was the most grateful I've ever been in my life, man. That was the toughest moment of my life. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that'd be hard. As a dad, I would struggle with something like that too. Seeing them in the medical field and seeing them sick or anything like that, you want to do anything you can for them. Now, the Showdown in the Downtown is a charity that helps fund medical research. It also helps fund programs that battle poverty, homelessness, and social isolation. As MMA athletes, you put your own health on the line to make a living, and unfortunately, athlete pay remains suboptimal. When an MMA athlete encounters a serious health problem, they may not be able to afford to get adequate care. Bringing up Ray Borg, for example. He was a UFC athlete he had a baby boy who had a serious brain condition. He couldn't afford the medical bills, and he had to resort to auctioning off fight shirts. Yeah. You caught wind of this, and you covered his medical bills, which is absolutely incredible. how was that? How did he respond to that, and how did that whole thing come to play?
Yeah, I saw his post, and it had a picture of his son, and his son was maybe a little younger than mine. So I've never met Ray Borg. I've never had a conversation with the guy, but obviously I know the life of a UFC fighter, and especially the level he was at, and he's fallen some hard times and trying to figure that out. And I saw him, selling shirts to raise the money. I'm like, oh my God, that's not going to get the kid there. And then my aunt is one of the head ER nurses in a hospital where I'm from. So I called her to find out what kind of condition the little boy had, because I've never heard of it. And it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So I think I was going to show with Rogan. I brought up on Rogan, and I knew the best way to get to him. I said, "Hey, Ray Borg, I'm not looking for anything. I'll cover your son's medical bills." So I covered it that week or that stay. I sent them the money. I transferred them the money. So I was in. It's something that I think he's always going to fight with, which is tough to deal with, and hopefully the little dude's doing all right, man. But that's it, man. I just feel like I can help. If I can help, I definitely will.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great of you to do that. And I couldn't imagine, so we're lucky in Canada, we have healthcare, but there's research. We need money for research and to get all these things going. And I'm hoping people that are tuning in, please don't forget to donate. Hit the donate button. Even $1 goes a long way. Anything helps. Everything helps. Moving forward, let's talk about Jon Jones, man. In the news, you brought it up. You said it. He's in the news again. What do you think is wrong with him? You think he's just a wild dude and you can never contain him? Do you think he'll ever? I think it taints his legacy, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. Does it taint Mike Tyson's legacy? You look at him now, all these years later, he's still, he's in movies. He has a huge podcast. Everybody wants to be his friend, and he has his own fight league. So I think in hindsight, I don't know, but I think with Jon, he is the best fighter we've ever had in the UFC. As Dana said in his interview, the kid has some demons. You're telling me, the baddest man walking the earth has some anger issues, has some demons. Yeah, man. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he surrounds himself with bad people, or, I don't know him that close enough. I have trained with him a few times, but wouldn't dare say I know the guy. It's such a shame, man. And remember, the reason he was in Las Vegas at the UFC IP Center, or whatever it's called, was because he was receiving an award because his fight at UFC 165 that your boy also fought on, not in the Hall of Fame, not a big deal, but he was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame for his fight against Gustafsson. So, he's in Vegas receiving a Hall of Fame award, and then it's kind of his career, right? Like, this makes sense. This makes sense, man. Yeah, you got an award, which is the baddest dude on the planet, but then also there's legal troubles. So I need more details before I just, close the chapter on Jon. I do think he fights at heavyweight. I do think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. You just got to wonder, whenever I see guys in trouble like this, I just wonder who they're surrounded with. Because if I act like this, I have my brother, my team around me, they would not let me get in this trouble, man. So it's alarming at his age, and after being through what he's been through, that he's still going through this. So, on BetterHelp.com, promo code CATS, I don't know what's going to help him, but he's a full-time therapist, full-time handler, but it's a shame, man, a guy at his level still dealing with this stuff. But to your point, does it tarnish his legacy? No, Mike Tyson did way worse stuff, man. We're talking about that guy's, he's on Dancing with the Stars and what the hell else he's doing. He's all over the place. He's in movies. So I think we'll look back on him and appreciate him, once he's retired. But right now, it's frustrating to be a Jon Jones fan.
Absolutely. I love Jon Jones, but when you see him in the trouble with the media and all these things are happening, and there's always that argument of who's the greatest pound for pound fighter of all time.
And who do you have?
George St. Pierre. GSP.
Oh, where? Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just because I'm Canadian. The thing is it's I think a legacy is made on of what you do outside of the cage. Humanitarian stuff, or just being a gentleman. I mean, you couldn't say anything bad about the guy.
Never. I love GSP. Trained with a guy, flew to Montreal, trained at TriStar with him. He might be the nicest guy in the world to ever compete in mixed martial arts or in sports for that matter. He's a legend. And if that's your criteria of what goes on outside the cage, yeah, he's your number one, or even Khabib for that matter. He's such a good guy too. But
so who would you say?
I base it solely off of what they do inside that octagon. I do not care when I'm talking about just pound for pound great. I don't care what they did outside. That's my criteria. So I would have John. You look at level of competition, dominance, even though, lately it's been a little tough, but especially if we were to get the heavyweight crown, there's no argument, man.
Interesting.
My knock on GSP is when he was competing, every year that the UFC goes
I hate to interrupt you. We're going to jump to a slide, but let's pick this conversation back up.
Gotcha.
This is very curious. We're going to go to a slide. Beautiful.
All right, a big shout out to all of our sponsors involved in helping make this event possible. Domino's Pizza Canada, Ellis Dawn, Baxter Canada, Asuka Canada, Pfizer, Fresnius Canada, Astellas Canada, Paladin Labs, Sterling Marking Products, Devolution Products, AstraZeneca, Starlim, UCB, Dr. Benjamin Thompson, Medicine Professional Corporation, Kelland Wealth Management Group, Kelly Hansen, Wealth Management Horizon, Mike Sheffer, Dr. Hassan Mostafa, Dr. Chris McIntyre, Alexion Canada, Medtronic, CTV London, News Talk 1290, CJBK, and Bell Media. A big thank you to all of our sponsors. Of course, tonight wouldn't be possible. So again, thank you to all of our sponsors and all of you out there watching and following along with us this evening. The tally, we're over $122,000. Please keep those donations coming in. It is so easy to donate. So we have to get to $250,000. And I know together we can do it. Another one of our charities benefiting from funds raised this evening is the Unity Project. As one of London's littlest shelters, but one of Canada's largest participatory shelters, we would like to hear from Ian Gingrich, frontline team leader, on how his support and how your support is now needed more than ever as homelessness is expected to increase post-pandemic. And from kidney transplant patient Dr. Dwayne Jackson and his wife, Dr. Kim Jackson, on how a kidney transplant has changed his life.
So the Unity Project kind of does a little bit of everything. predominantly working with people experiencing homelessness. Really, the goal is to always stabilize people when they're in a crisis situation. In addition to that, always to attempt to divert people from even having to enter the shelter system, period. Outside of that, it's really that main goal of finding people housing, with stability, with supports, and just supporting them in their journey on whatever else they're really looking to do. It could be anything from getting new clothing, a new hoodie, shirt on their back, new shoes, always something that's in short supply, and even in some cases, getting people to, follow towards their dreams of schooling. We've had those situations too, where, someone's dream is to, become, I don't know, maybe it's a social worker, and we've helped support that journey as well. Please donate to help end homelessness.
I'm Dr. Dwayne Jackson. I'm a professor at the University of Western Ontario Schulich School of Medicine in this Department of Medical Biophysics. I'm also an athlete and a kidney transplant recipient. My first symptom was really high blood pressure and visual disturbances. But then once I actually kind of came to grips with the fact that my kidneys were failing, I started to kind of recollect a lot of other symptoms. Water retention was one of the main ones. I had a lot of weight gain for no reason at the very beginning of the disease. And then also I started getting a lot of cognitive kind of disturbances, foggy headed, these kind of things that were associated with urea. The biggest thing I noticed was I'd controlled this disease for 7 years. Pretty much the day that I found out I had kidney failure, my daughter was born. So I was really focused on keeping myself alive. But then when I ended up on dialysis, I suddenly realized that I was at the fate of, medical system and, this machine. So we were fortunate enough, though, to do home dialysis right from the get-go. And my wife being a nurse and me being a physiologist helped that process quite quickly. So I was blessed to have that opportunity and that option. The kidney transplant changed everything. Within 6 weeks, my quality of life was better than it had been in probably 20 years. That's when I actually realized what kidney disease had done to me. And that was a big turning point in my life to realize that I had this beautiful gift. Not a cure, which a lot of people don't understand that, but this treatment that can be localized and mobile, I guess. The research in this area, I think, can be driven quite easily if people start becoming aware that this isn't a cure. And this awareness is really important, I think, to get out to the public so that they do fund the research so that we can come up with a permanent solution to this fatal disease. I'm fortunate because I have a couple of pooch kidneys, and now I've got a good one sitting in my intraperitoneal cavity. But a lot of other people aren't so fortunate because this is a multifactorial disease with diabetes and obesity and everything else. So I'd really believe that research in this area and funding in this area is much needed so that we can get the solutions to this problem complete.
We have to get courage to get into the cage. We have to fight opposition. There's always somebody on the other side, or else it wouldn't be a fight at all. Whereas our health in real life, whether it be mental illness or kidney disease or whatever, you have to fight that too. Because if you don't fight, you lose, right? You could kind of compare the two, but having a real illness or a real health issue is not something that you can just say one day, you know what, I don't feel like fighting today. You have to fight every day. It's like, fighters, we train every day, we're strict and everything else, but we also have a choice, whereas people with the real issues and real health problems don't have a choice. So they're the real fighters there. I tip my hat to them. And if the King thinks that what we do is some sort of semblance to what real fighters do that are fighting mental illness and health issues, then, thank you, King. I really appreciate that. That makes me feel a lot better, but I feel that what we do is minute compared to what the real problems are and the real people fighting for their health is.
My name is Mark Homnick, owner of Adrenaline Training Center here in London, Ontario. Former UFC fighter. I was the #1 contender for a while, fought for the world title back in 2011. Since retired, I run the gym here full time, coaching athletes. I have 2 beautiful daughters and a lovely wife, and I live in Tempsford, Ontario. Homelessness and poverty is a massive issue right now in London, as well as the country and all over the world. But, just speaking here because I'm a London citizen and run a business out of here, it's something that we've always been involved with. We've always been involved with youth charity for kids who are homeless and troubled kids that, we've always given them memberships to the gym. Whether it's, they work their membership off, giving some work to the gym, but it gives them an outlet. So, it's something that's near and dear to our heart here at Adrenaline that, we do support the local community. And that's one initiative that needs some serious issues right now in funding and support. If there's a 1-2 blow that I could give, as a KO of the year, it'd be homelessness, poverty, and obviously King Faisal's Kidney Foundation.
Yeah, I do see a lot of the homelessness around London, especially in the area of the city that I'm around a lot. And especially now during COVID, you don't know a lot of people's situations, and it's important to try and give people a safe haven where they can, people can't get better if they're not in a good spot, so it's important to be able to give back to those people and give them an opportunity to, improve their situation that they're in. And, everybody needs a helping hand. So if everybody helped their neighbor, then nobody would be without help, right? Personally, I've lost one of my strength conditioning coaches, and I've lost my father to leukemia. So until that point, I was almost ignorant to of what people go through because I'd never really experienced it. But since I experienced it firsthand, I seen what my father went through a lot, and anything people could do to lessen that pain for people or help eradicate some of these diseases and illnesses is very important, especially the way the world's changing now and new things are popping up all the time. Please donate generously to help knock out kidney disease, poverty, and homelessness.
All right, when you think about some of these numbers, like 1 in 10 Canadians has kidney disease. That's 4 million people. The number of Canadians on dialysis will double in the next 10 years. More than 3,000 Canadians are on a waiting list for a kidney transplant. That's why we're here tonight, folks. That's why we are raising money for all of these important community programs. We're closing in on a $140,000 raised. So to get to our 250,000 mark, you have to keep donating. It is so easy to donate. I hope you're enjoying our live stream so far this evening. I know I am. Brendan is a fascinating guy, and he's got so much going on. Everything, of course, from his podcast to his comedic prowess, of course. We are now joined, of course, by Brendan and Jamie Champion, president of Prospect Fighting Championships, for our last Q&A. And we stopped you guys right in the middle of a pretty heavy conversation there. I'm excited to get back to it.
Let's do it.
Yes, we were talking about pound for pound, the greatest fighter in MMA history. Break it down for us, Brandon. Tell us who you think and why.
Again, it just when it comes down to just inside the octagon, their body of work, I would give it to a guy like John Jones. I think the older heads, paved the way, like, a Matt Hughes or a Chuck Liddell, and even GSP, I would categorize it in the little older crew. But as every year passes on, the level of talent and difficulty goes up and up. These guys are so good. So because it's not like the NFL where it's been around forever and the best of the best have been there for years. And, if the NBA compare Jordan to LeBron, you can do that because those are the best athletes we have playing basketball. UFC, mixed martial arts, is not like that. Our best athletes aren't in the sport right now. We have some guys who are trickling over, but we still have years to go before the best athletes in the world compete in mixed martial arts. So although some of those older guys and their Hall of Famers were dominant, I don't know if they'd be as dominant in today's world where guys are getting better at everything. So that's why I tend to give a guy like John Jones, Kamaru Usman's on his way. There's some of those guys who are currently competing that I give them a slight edge because everybody's so good.
So when you say so good, are you comparing well-roundedness,
Yeah.
Dominance over certain. I mean, this could, because we could argue, say some guys that haven't fought the greatest of guys either and still look stellar. I mean,
Yeah, you're saying with John?
yeah.
Yeah, if you go like Dominic Reyes fight or Anthony Smith fight or the Dos Santos fight, those are 3 fights where he didn't look great, and there's.
I think he lost to Gustafsson when he fought in Toronto. I think he lost.
Interesting.
I do think he lost.
Yeah, there's an argument for that for sure. But if you look at a guy like Khabib, let's take a guy who's competed recently and retired. You look at a guy like Khabib, arguing he never lost a round. Like never, ever lost a round. The argument against him would he didn't do it long enough. And also in today's, fight world, these guys do jump and take super fights, So I would love to see him jump up and fight Kamaru Usman, stuff like that, but it never got done. But listen, nobody's wrong. GSP, sure, I'll entertain that. Khabib, I'll entertain that. John Jones, sure. Mighty Mouse, because he's smaller, I don't give as much ground, but there's argument for all these guys, man. And you know what? There's no right answer,
Right.
It's whoever you believe's the best.
You're right. Now, with building up the fights and rivalries, it's an important part of selling a fight. Michael Bisping, Chael Sonnen, they're great trash talkers. Some athletes take it a little bit further. Conor McGregor, Colby Covington, they bring in religion, the wives, families. Do you think they're taking it too far? Do you think, or is it a page from Vince McMahon's book, this is kind of how you sell a fight?
Yeah, I don't think it's too far if you're winning, right? If that's your shtick, if that's what people are tuning in for, and you're the bad guy or you're the guy that makes these guarantees and you get it done, I think people will put up with it. I think it's like, all right, that's what he does. It's fun and he's winning. We're on board. But if you're doing that and what you're saying is not coming to fruition, or you're just a troll and you're just trolling guys and you're on a fight, losing skid, stuff like that, that's where, to me, it gets a little cringy. So if you're winning, you can do whatever you want, man. You literally whatever you want, and we're on board with it, as long as it's tasteful. But I think because Conor got so famous, he's the most famous UFC fighter of all time, because he got so much, clout and so much money and fame. I think a lot of guys who weren't at Conor's level went, oh man, you got to do that to get notoriety and success. All right, so you see guys that's on their character talking trash, and so we went through that phase, and I think guys dialed it back down now. So there's always gonna be those guys. With Colby Covington, he's just Chael Sonnen 2.0 really, but probably better boxing, because remember Chael for the longest time, Chael was a stud, man, and he was doing well in the WC against Paulo Filho and stuff like that, but he was never like a marquee name until he became the heel and started doing that WWE stuff and those antics. He was the most exciting fighter, but that stuff got us to tune in, and then obviously Conor took it to another level. But listen, if it's natural for those guys and, and it fits their kind of persona, I'm on board. But when it's not a natural fit, I can't stand it, man. Or when it gets personal. Like, I don't like when they cross the line. Like, I think Khabib and Conor, especially Conor, crossed the line. I don't think that doesn't make any of us feel good,
Why do you think he pushed them so far? Do you think when somebody talks so much trash, do you think that's out of fear? Maybe he saw, man, I got to get in this guy's head because this may be the only way I can beat him?
Yes, you're referring to when Khabib and Conor were going to fight each other. I think that was literally a technical move. I thought he was, he got Aldo, super angry and, fight out of character. And he fought, with aggression, got knocked out. So it's worked for Conor previously. I think he was doing the same thing with Khabib. The tough thing now is how he continues to do it when he lost the fight. If he won, I'm like, all right, yeah, do your thing, man. But when you lose and continue to do it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, man. I think Conor right now is just trying to figure out like what's the next steps, right? Because he lost to Dustin Poirier. You want to stay relevant. So I think it's a battle within him. And I truly believe Conor's a good person. So when he tweets that stuff out, he's doing it for shock value, and it upsets a lot of people. But it's his way of basically like, hey, I'm still here, guys. Here, look over here. So I don't put too much weight into it. I don't think he's a bad person. I just think that crazy limelight that he's been having lately is slowly slipping away because he's not winning fights. So I look at it as kind of desperation almost. But I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be okay.
Do you think money changed him? Do you think it took the hunger away, the desire to be a top level athlete? I mean, you would think making $100 million off of a boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, that you would have nothing to fight for anymore. Or is that embedded in him? I mean, it's embedded in you all. I mean, you're fighters, you fight is what you fight. But if all of a sudden you have $100 million in the bank, juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore.
Yeah, there's that. I think with Conor, he is a true fighter's fighter. And it looked like he channeled that into, his whiskey with Proper 12 and sold that for $1 jillion. So I think where guys get in trouble where they can't challenge, they can't channel that fighting kind of work ethic into something that they're passionate about. And that's where it gets dicey for a lot of these guys. But I think Conor's going to find something. There's so many business avenues for him. But yeah, to say that, he's willing to make the same sacrifices that a guy like Dustin Poirier is, or even a guy like Khabib, even though Khabib has, more money than God, Khabib drives like a RAV4, something in Dagestan. He doesn't care about the materialistic stuff. To him, it's all about fighting. So I don't think he's willing to put in the work that a guy like Dustin Poirier was willing to do. I really don't. I think Dustin Poirier, he's still, I'm sure he does well, but he's not Conor McGregor well. So he's trying to, provide for his family. So you're talking about two different animals there, man. And that's why, Poirier got it done.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think's next for him?
For Conor? That Nate Diaz trilogy fight's never going anywhere, ever. They could do that, in 20 years and we'd still tune in. So I think there's that fight. I could see a Tony Ferguson. Obviously he's fallen to hard times. We've all wanted to see that fight. That'd be a big payday for Tony. Obviously there's a lot of rumors, him fighting a guy like Jake Paul or Logan Paul, stuff like that. Let me do you guys a solid here. None of that will ever happen unless Dana plays ball with Conor so he can jump into another contract and fight a guy like Jake Paul, whether it's with Showtime or whoever he's fighting with when that fight happens. So that gets a little more complicated, but I think there's something to that, especially if the UFC goes, all right, let's say Conor were to lose to Nate, or maybe he's done fighting and the UFC can't really use him anymore. I think then maybe Dana and the UFC would be willing to play ball and let Conor do something like a Jake Paul fight, because they would, benefit greatly off that. That's the only chance that happens.
How do you feel about Jake Paul and all these Triller events that are happening, and they're generating millions of dollars in revenue, and the fighters are making great pay and great bank, and everyone's, the comparison between the two sports, the pay gap. And that's something that always kind of keeps coming up. Where do you see it going? Do you think it's going to change the scope of how, say, Dana White handles things in his retrospect?
Yeah, I don't know if he does, right? Because you look at boxing to the end of, for as long as boxing's been around, the marquee guy always got the lion's share of the money. It's just the way it is. You look at Floyd, look at Canelo, you look at, Anthony Joshua, the big boys get the lion's share of it, and then it trickles down. So that's the business model that boxing has created. In regards to Jake Paul, I understand there's a lot of hate on him and stuff like that. I get all that. I do think he takes the sport serious. There's clearly a lane for it. People are buying it. So who am I to say he can't compete? He's done pretty damn well, beating Ben Askren, highlighting knockout Nate Robinson, and then, beating a Woodley, who's no punk, man. So the kid's making the right moves. I don't know what's next. I think now is where it gets a little dicey for him, because I thought Woodley would be a tougher matchup for him. And so, he's moving at a fast rate, and he's going to run into somebody who's going to give him some problems. Although Woodley really didn't, except for that one, I think it was in the 4th round. So I think if he fights a guy like Masvidal or Anderson Silva, it could be a tough night in the office for him. But I do think that kind of YouTube crossover stops once Jake Paul loses. I think if you were to get like starched or just go on a 2 or 3 fight losing skid, I think that lane stops. I think you're always going to have the older, Tyson, the older guys want to fight each other. And that's a different lane to me. They can do that. But I do think that whole YouTube crossover against real fighters stops and ends with Jake Paul.
Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting to see how everything plays out, because, it's the hype thing right now. Everyone's calling out everybody. I like to see him fight Anderson Silva.
It's a tough look for him.
Right. If you say, hey, you want to fight guys that will say washed up, which they want, this is what they want to say. They're not washed up, but
No.
the media will say that they're washed up.
Sure.
I want to see him fight Anderson Silva, who looked fantastic against Tito Ortiz.
Yeah, and he looked even better against Julio Chavez Jr., who's a former world champion, 50-3. So that'd be a tough night in the office for Jake, or not. What if he beats him, man? It's insane. So, I think it's good. People are tuning in. So if that's what they want to do, and people tuning in, they're making money, and a guy like Woodley and Ben Askren get the highest paydays of their life. I'm all for it, man.
Do you think they'll say it's rigged? Do you think there's any of that where there's a behind the scenes saying, listen, you're going to make lots of paper?
No, I know a lot of people say that. I think it's the cop out, right? When you look at a guy like Jake Paul, who's only been training for like 3 years, and he's beat guys like Woodley and Ben Askren and, doing his thing. Woodley's a buddy. Trust me when I tell you this, Woodley would not take a dive to Jake Paul. You're talking about a UFC Hall of Famer, a multi-time world champion in Strikeforce in the UFC, in the welterweight division. If he said, hey, man, we'll give you, I don't know, $5 million, take a fall against Jake Paul, Woodley is not the guy. And that would get out, man. Trust me, that would get out. I don't buy that stuff. I think it's hard. I think it's the cop-out, right? Like you're telling me you only trained 3 years and knocked out Ben Askren? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you, dude. You're telling me you only trained 3 years and knocked out the 1999 slam dunk contest winner and Nate Robinson? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you, dude. So I think it's just the cop out. It's what people hate him so bad. They just want to, it's rigged. Okay, dude. All right. So I'm not buying it. I don't buy that at all.
Do you think you'll make the transition to MMA?
No. The MMA is a different animal. I think
sure
you're just talking about a different path. There's too many ways to lose. He started too late. When we're talking about wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, he could get decent at everything, but he couldn't get so good where he could, jump into the UFC and not a chance. So that's a little harder route to go. That'd be a harder route to go.
But they did take CM Punk.
They did. That's where it's, that's where.
Right?
That's a good,
you're talking skill level. I'm not saying that he wasn't skilled, but I don't think he was skill level high enough to compete with the UFC.
No, you got it right the first time. And I think CM Punk's a great guy, but as far as he wasn't skilled, I don't think he landed a punch against Mickey Gall. He had no business being in there. That's why it's a little weird, condescending, right? When Dana's like, I can't believe Jake Paul's doing this. It's like, you signed CM Punk, dude, put him on a main card. What are you talking about? The guy had 0 fights. You put him on there because he was in the WWE? It doesn't make sense.
I think that's a slap in the face to all professional athletes who are striving to get there, to go, hey, well, if I had a million followers already, I would be there. I would get the shot.
A little bit. I don't partake in that, like that victim mentality, right? It's like, if you're good enough, you get there, dude. CM Punk he's not going to have a career. He's just a flash in the pan and then he's out. But there's a lot more ways to get in the UFC than there were ever before. Look at the Dana White Contender Series, which is fantastic, which I think took over TUF as the premier kind of feeder league to the UFC. Then you do have TUF, and you have LFA, and you have all the Canadian leagues, and then you have Titan Championship with Lex McMahon, and you have all these other leagues that are just filtering into the UFC. So it's a good time to be a fighter right now, man.
Yeah, absolutely. What would it take to get you to throw the gloves back on, and how much money? If you got let's say Logan Paul called you tomorrow and said,
hilarious.
Hey, Brandon, what's it going to take to get you back in the ring to do a boxing match? Would you do it?
So here's the thing, everybody, and pay close attention. If, let's say in 6 months, it's like, Brendan Schaub versus Nick Lachey in the celebrity boxing match. All my podcasts have failed. I'm not selling any tickets on the road. My whiskey crumbled. My Thick Boy merch is not doing well. People that do these celebrity fights usually aren't doing great, man. So that would be a bummer. And I got kids now. I need all the brain cells I can muster. I don't want to get hit in the head anymore. So
10 million, bro. You telling me you wouldn't jump back in there?
10 million against Logan Paul. I would need to fight like The Rock or something. Like if we're gonna get eyeballs and I need pay-per-view, I need like The Rock or Aquaman to call me out, or like Thor or something like that. That'd be fun. But I don't think that's happening, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's good to see that's not a price. You know, some guys would say 10 million. I'd fight you for $10 million. It's $10 million, you know, I mean.
Now, if Jeff Bezos was like, hey man, I get this bodyguard who is just insane. I'll give you $100 million and one of my jets. I'm probably going to fight that bodyguard. You feel me? But
yeah,
these paydays aren't that crazy, man.
True enough. So you have a big show tonight in the Alamo?
Yes, in San Antonio, man, the Bud Light Event Center. And we'll see how it goes, man. It's a big kind of arena. It's half outdoor, half indoor. And I got the whole squad here. My brother's standing right there, and we're ready to go, man. So yeah, just the countdown now. I'm on tour. You know, after this, I go to Denver, my hometown, next week. After that, I think it's Las Vegas, and then it's Brea. And so yeah, man, it's the best job in the world. It's the best job. Thank God I don't get punched in the face anymore.
When you come to Toronto.
Ooh, I can't wait.
You know, I want to be a part of that somehow. I want to be involved, help set it up. You know,
yes.
I'd like to see you live in person would be the way to. I'm grateful that you came out to do this. It means a lot to us, and I think we've raised $134,000, I believe. I can hardly see, but that's a lot so far, and that's great. I appreciate you doing this, bro, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, me too. I can't thank you guys enough, and the whole team. You guys. You know, I do a lot of different projects, and your whole team, you and the whole team who put this all together, just all you guys are just great to work with, man, and easy. You make my life so much easier. So not only is it for a great cause, but you got a great team there, man. I can't thank you guys enough.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Well, last time, guys, please donate $1 even. Any little bit helps. We're trying to reach our goal, and we're almost there. Any parting shots you'd like to take before we wrap this up?
No, this was such a fun event. I'm honored to be part of it, man. And it's such a great cause, and kidney disease is obviously a major issue. And you guys do so much more than that. And I'm just glad we could raise some money. And if you haven't yet, donate now. And yeah, till next time, guys. I love you guys, and thanks for tuning in.
Hey, before you go, the Thick Boy line, are you dropping a kids line soon?
Oh, that's a great question. I need to, man. I made just one-offs for my little boys, but there'll be a little thick line coming soon. That's not a bad idea.
And don't forget little girls, because I got a little girl that would rock.
Oh, we got thick girl line too. I got you, man. I got the kids covered.
You're the man, bro.
Yeah, appreciate you guys, man.
Okay, let's wrap this up, and we'll jump to our final slides. And again, Brandon, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Best of luck tonight.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for donating, everybody. Appreciate you.
How the Fierce and Fit boxing program started was with my friend who has Down syndrome. We were training together. I worked with her at the high school, and her mom asked me if I could teach her how to box, and I said, of course I can. We started training at the gym, which the gym that I went to was really awesome. They allowed me to bring in anyone, and me and my friend, we started boxing, and we shot some videos, we posted it, and another parent who had a student with Down syndrome came and asked me if I could teach their daughter as well. I said, of course. Then we started our little group with the 3 of us, and before you knew it, there is 5 of us training in person. Then I got a shot for 2020 Olympics. I put everything on hold and started training myself again for Olympics. And then COVID hit. Olympics got put on hold, and I turned our boxing into virtual, seeing as we couldn't get together in person anymore. And the virtual boxing allowed me to reach more students people with all types of special needs, not just Down syndrome anymore. Now we have people with cerebral palsy, Asperger's, Williams syndrome, and it's just incredible.
PHSS Medical and Complex Care and Community actually stands for Participating Housing Supports and Services. We provide support to people living with disabilities within their homes, and also provide different services such as respites, family supports, rec and leisure programs. So being a part of Showdown in the Downtown really bridges the gap between the funding that we receive from the government and provides opportunity for those that we serve. These funds support programs such as our music therapy program, registration fees for musical instruments, boxing gloves. There's actually a group of ladies that started their own business, so we provided some seed money for that. So again, really all these opportunities outside of what the regular funding would provide.
Everybody deserves to feel like they belong. I know that when I was fighting and I was part of a team, although it was me training, and when I'm competing on my own and no one else is there with me in the ring, but I still felt like I was part of a team. And same thing as this virtual boxing. They're at home, they're by themselves in front of the camera, but when they're on there, we're all part of a team, and everyone deserves to feel like they're included. What Showdown in the Downtown does to support fierce and fit boxing is it allows everyone to participate no matter their financial situation. Also providing equipment for everyone, gloves, hand weights, things like that. Without their support, it's just, we would still do it, but it would be really hard.
Adrenaline Training Center feels a responsibility to, help out the community whenever we can. I mean, London has been so good and so supportive as a whole. I mean, the city has really embraced us. So any chance we have to give back to the community is definitely something we always jump at the opportunity. And to align ourselves with somebody like Faisal just gives us more opportunities to do that. The Showdown in the Downtown productions have been great. It's got a little bit of touch of that old school ballroom boxing. They put together a great production. You got the, some elements that are kind of a little more new school, UFC inspired, but then there's that old classic, people dressed up in suits and tuxedos like old school boxing. So that element of it I really enjoy. Yeah, these patients that are dealing with these issues, kids especially that haven't had a lot of life experience to draw off, they're the real warriors, right? It's life or death for them. For us, it's pride, it's competition. But when you're talking about your life, it's a whole different ball game. But I like to think that, a fight is almost like a microcosm of that, and hopefully some of these kids that are dealing with these things can see somebody look like they're down and out in a fight, and then struggle and battle their way back, and they can draw some strength from that and maybe some inspiration. And that is something I'd like to think maybe hopefully somewhere out there I inspired somebody to kind of keep going and keep battling through whatever their fight is.
So what Showdown in the Downtown does, it brings into the limelight, into the mainstream of what people are actually suffering, because we live in this little bubble. Our problems are the most important problems in the whole wide world, but there are people that have it much, much worse. The fact that combat sports are able to help with charitable initiatives, it's a huge, huge thing, because a big part of it is not just you going out competing and you going out winning championships and belts, but it's also the humility of passing on knowledge and passing on discipline and passing on your teachings and your lineage onto your students. Being able to pass something on and be able to create something out of nothing, turn that into something healing, it's so satisfying for a martial artist that not only can their skills transfer into championships and into victories, but also into helping the people in need. And Showdown in the Downtown takes something that's so serious and gives a creative way for people to get together to raise money and to combat illness, and to give people that are fighting this illness a fighting chance, and so that they don't quit in their battle.
All right, everyone, a big thank you to Brendan Schaub for his support and entertaining us all this evening. And of course, Jamie Champion for being our fantastic Q&A host. He's the president of Prospect Fighting Championships. All right, so we have only 5 Domino's pizza cards left. So make sure to scoop those up. And we've had some major donations come in the last few minutes. So our goal tonight, if you remember, was $250,000. I feel like I need a bit of a drum roll. I can do air drums for you. All right, this is pretty fantastic. So we have raised $294,000. Wow, I wish I could just give you all a big hug out there. This is pretty fabulous. I'm so excited we have reached and surpassed our goal by a lot. So again, $294,000. And let's get those pizza cards sold. There's only 5 left, as I mentioned. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and supporting by donating, of course, purchasing those Domino's pizza cards. All the dollars raised tonight are essential now more than ever, given what we're going through. So if you haven't had the opportunity and you'd like to donate and put us really over the top, I mean, we're there, but I know those last minute donations are still coming in. Once again, we'd like to thank our champion sponsor, Domino's Pizza Canada, for their ongoing support of the Showdown in the downtown, and Ellis Dawn, our super heavyweight sponsor, and to all of our amazing sponsors out there for helping to make tonight's event successful. And of course, to all of you. And I have to give a big shout out to the team here at the Showdown. They are absolutely incredible, working so hard behind the scenes and making sure everything goes awesome out there. So thanks again for all of you for joining us tonight. We appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you for donating to knock out kidney disease. The Showdown in the Downtown is an awesome event. I hope to see you all live in person next year.